Hello and welcome to The Cold Reason. They say belief brings comfort, that religion gives people hope in times of pain. But comfort doesn't prove something is true. A belief can be soothing and still be false. If someone told you a lie every day since you were a child, you'd grow up thinking it was part of reality. That's what religion often is, a well-wrapped story handed down by people we trust and accepted before we ever had the chance to think for ourselves. The truth is, most people believe in a religion simply because they were born into it, not because they investigated all religions and then chose the one that made the most sense. A child raised in a Muslim family will likely grow up to be Muslim. A child born into a Catholic family will likely grow up to be Catholic. This pattern continues across cultures and continents. It's geography, not truth, that shapes belief. That alone should make us question how much of religious belief is about evidence, and how much is just inherited habit. Religious ideas often begin with stories that try to explain things people didn't understand. Why does the sun rise? Why does thunder strike? Why do we get sick? Before science, the answer was always the same. The gods did it. Humans saw agency in everything because they understood their own actions. If a person could throw a rock, then maybe lightning was a god throwing fire. If a person could speak and command, maybe nature responded to some bigger, invisible speaker. That's not a revelation. It's pattern seeking. It's how humans evolved to survive. But the same instinct that helped early people avoid danger also led them to believe things that weren't there. And those beliefs stuck because they became useful. Religion became more than just stories. It became a way to organize people, control behavior, and enforce rules. If you tell someone that a god is always watching, they might behave better when no one else is around. That made religion very appealing to rulers. Combine fear of punishment with the promise of reward, and people become easier to govern, not through evidence, through emotional pressure. Religions make big claims. They say a supernatural being created everything, watches everything, and has a plan for everyone. But when you ask for proof, you get stories, you get metaphors, you get emotional arguments. You get phrases like, "We can't understand God's ways." But if something can't be tested, can't be verified, and can't be shown to match what we see in the world, then how is it different from just making things up? If you believe something is true, you should be able to explain what would make you change your mind. That's how we treat every serious claim. If someone says a drug works, we ask for studies. If someone says they can fly, we ask them to show us. But if someone says a god created the universe, many people just accept it. And if bad things happen, they're told it's part of some mysterious plan. No matter what happens, good or bad, the belief stays untouched. That's not truth. That's insulation from truth. A useful question to ask is, if everything in the universe had a natural explanation, would religion still survive? Would people still believe if nothing supernatural ever showed up? Because it never has. The more we've learned about the world, the smaller religion's role has become. We used to think diseases were caused by demons. Then we found germs. We thought lightning was divine punishment. Then we found electricity. As science explained more, gods retreated. They moved from the clouds to the heavens, from mountains to the unseen, and finally into concepts so vague they can't be measured at all. There's something very revealing about that pattern. When people didn't understand something, they filled the gap with a god. But every time we discovered the real explanation, that god disappeared. That's not divine truth. That's a placeholder for ignorance. And yet, religion doesn't go away easily. That's because it's more than belief. It's identity. It's family. It's culture. It's the songs we hear growing up, the prayers we're taught to whisper, the holidays we celebrate. Beliefs are glued to deep emotions. And for many people, to question religion feels like betraying a part of themselves. That's why these beliefs are so hard to let go of, even when they don't hold up to reason. But not everything about religion is false. It's true that it builds community. It creates routines, gives people rituals, and helps them feel less alone. When someone is grieving or afraid, religion steps in with support. But here's the key point. The comfort comes from people, from friends, from community, from shared moments. Not from a supernatural being. A church without people is just a building. A prayer without ears is just a whisper in the dark. When you remove the belief, the goodness doesn't disappear. People can be kind without belief. They can be moral, honest, generous, and brave without needing a rule book from a god. In fact, Most of the world's ethical principles existed long before modern religions ever showed up. The idea of fairness, care for others, responsibility, these come from shared human experience, not from commandments written in the desert. And here's something few people talk about. When you actually look closely at religious texts, many of them don't promote the kind of morality we admire today. They contain laws that allow slavery, punish harmless acts, and treat people unequally. So, what do most believers do? They skip those parts. They focus on the verses about kindness and ignore the rest. But if you have to cherry pick the parts of your faith that aren't cruel or outdated, what does that say about the source? It's not rare to meet people who say they're religious, but they don't really follow the teachings. They don't give away all their money. They don't live in poverty. They don't refuse to plan for tomorrow. They don't turn away from their families if their beliefs clash. Most believers edit their religion to fit their life. And the more they do that, the more the belief stops looking like religion and starts looking like personal preference dressed up as divine command. Even so, some argue that religion is necessary to give life meaning. But meaning doesn't come from being told what to believe. It comes from choosing, from understanding, from building your own path. A belief that can't be questioned isn't a path, it's a cage. When you stop to really think about religious beliefs, not just what people say, but what they're actually claiming, you start to notice how strange they sound when stripped of tradition. That a being outside space and time created the universe, watches every person's private life, listens to thoughts, cares what people eat, what clothes they wear, and who they sleep with. That this being has preferences about ancient rituals, and that certain books written thousands of years ago contain perfect truth. And that believing all this without evidence is not only good, but required. In any other area of life, this would be seen as delusional. If someone told you that their neighbor had magical powers and lived forever, you'd probably raise your eyebrows. If they insisted this person was invisible, couldn't be touched, didn't speak out loud, and only communicated through old letters and symbols, you'd ask for proof. But when it comes to religion, those same standards vanish. And this is one of the key problems. Religion is protected by social rules that prevent scrutiny. People are taught from a young age that it's rude or offensive to question someone's faith, that it's better to stay silent than to ask why they believe what they do. But shielding an idea from criticism doesn't make it true. It just makes it immune to progress. Throughout history, religion hasn't just shaped beliefs. It's shaped laws, institutions, and social structures. It's told people who they can marry, what roles they can have in society, and even who gets to live or die. These rules weren't built on reason or fairness. They were built on authority. An authority that claims divine backing becomes nearly impossible to challenge, even when it harms people. Look at how many wars have been fought in the name of religion. How many people were tortured, burned, or silenced for questioning sacred texts. How many people still suffer because of beliefs that treat them as less than equal because of gender, sexuality, or simply because they were born into the wrong faith. These aren't side effects. They're direct results of taking unproven beliefs as unquestionable truth. Now, some people will say these are just the extremes, that most religious people are peaceful and kind, and that's often true. But peaceful believers aren't peaceful because of religion. They're peaceful despite it, because they use their conscience, because they apply their own sense of right and wrong and ignore the parts of the text that tell them otherwise. And once you're already picking and choosing which parts to follow, you're no longer following the religion. You're following your own morality. So, why cling to the belief? Why keep the label? Often it's fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of death, fear of losing a community. Religion answers these fears not with evidence, but with certainty. It offers the comfort of, you'll see your loved ones again, of, you're part of a bigger plan, of, you are watched and cared for. It feels good to believe that. But feeling good isn't proof, and some beliefs in religion are not just unproven, they're logically incoherent. The idea of an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good being that allows terrible suffering makes no sense. If this being is good and can stop pain, why doesn't it? If it can't stop it, it's not all-powerful. If it won't stop it, it's not all good. And if it doesn't know it's happening, it's not all-knowing. These contradictions aren't just philosophical, they're practical. They show that religious ideas don't stand up to the same standards we use everywhere else. There's another flaw that often goes unnoticed. Many religious people accept their beliefs not because they were convinced by arguments, but because they had emotional experiences they couldn't explain. A dream, a feeling during prayer, a sense of being connected to something bigger. These experiences are real, but they aren't evidence of a God. They're evidence of how powerful the human mind is, how it can create meaning, emotions, and even hallucinations under certain conditions. We don't need religion to explain those things. We need psychology, we need neuroscience, and we need humility to admit that just because something feels meaningful doesn't mean it's supernatural. And then there's the argument of tradition. People say, these beliefs have lasted for thousands of years. They must be true. But that's like saying astrology is true because people still read horoscopes. Popularity doesn't equal truth. Longevity doesn't equal truth. People believed the earth was flat for centuries. They believed bleeding people with leeches could cure disease. Time doesn't protect ideas from being wrong. Even the arguments that try to sound logical, like the idea that everything must have a cause, fall apart when you look closer. If everything needs a cause, then who caused the God? If the answer is that the God is eternal and uncaused, then why not just say the universe is eternal and uncaused? Adding a God to the chain doesn't solve the problem. It just pushes the question back one step and adds more complexity. What's more reasonable? That a mind outside of space and time, capable of creating universes, is watching over every thought you have, or that people, desperate for meaning, invented stories that made them feel less alone? Religious belief often thrives because it promises things that no one can verify: eternal life, cosmic justice, the idea that someone, somewhere, will make everything right. These are comforting stories, but they are stories. They are immune to testing, and they remain untouched no matter how much the world changes. That's not because they're true. It's because they're unfalsifiable, and that makes them very convenient and very dangerous. The idea that you can't be moral without religion is also deeply flawed. In fact, when you remove religious doctrine, what you're left with are the values most people already agree on. Don't hurt others. Help where you can. Be honest. Be kind. These values come from empathy, not scripture, from living in a world with other people and learning how to treat them well. You don't need a God to understand fairness. You don't need a divine threat to do what's right. Religion claims to offer answers, but more often, it shuts down questions. It tells people what to think instead of how to think. It punishes doubt. It rewards obedience. And in doing so, it stunts the growth of human understanding, not always intentionally, but consistently. It's worth asking, if religion disappeared tomorrow, what would we lose? Rituals? We can create new ones. Meaning? We can make it ourselves. Morality? We already have it, rooted in human experience. The truth is, we don't need supernatural beliefs to live good lives. We just need honesty, empathy, and the courage to admit what we know and what we don't. When you look at the full picture, what religion offers is not clarity. It's certainty without clarity. It's comfort without evidence. It's tradition without reason. And it's time we treated those things as what they are, not as sacred truths, but as inherited ideas. Ideas that should be questioned, challenged, and, when necessary, let go. If we're serious about truth, we can't keep protecting beliefs just because they feel good. Truth doesn't owe us comfort. It only asks that we care enough to search for it. If this gave you something to think about, make sure to subscribe. It really helps more people find content like this. And I'm curious, where are you listening from? Drop your country or city in the comments. I'd love to see how far this conversation is reaching. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.